Welcome to Keep Hustling, where we are going past the why to get to the how. I'm your host, the always hustling Aaron Gordon, aka NY Risk Advisor, aka Mr. Keep Hustling. In this podcast, we will be diving deep into the professional and personal successes of our guests to find out how they hustled through the most difficult times in their life and their development to achieve the success they've gotten to today. So buckle up for what hopes to be an amazing ride. Let's get to it. Welcome to Keep Hustling with my guest, Andrew Martin. Andrew, thank you so much for being here.
Man, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
You know, I start every episode with a little snippet about our guests. So I'll just tell everyone, I specifically didn't wear my NY Risk hat today because I felt it would be disrespectful to Andrew, who has been through a traumatic event. Where he is in Pensacola, Florida, they had like a few centimeters, maybe even an inch of snow, had to cancel our original recording, hunkered down. I was getting ready to send out the National Guard, but he reached out to me and told me that he was safe. So really, Andrew, the sacrifice that you've made over the last number of weeks to even be alive with that crazy, minuscule snowstorm is really, we appreciate it. Those of us here at Keep Hustling appreciate you for getting through that.
Man, it was tough, but we made it.
Also, I just want you to know, I love Pensacola, Florida. So it's the only
have you been?
I've been to the airport. It's a great airport.
Yeah.
One of my closest friends lives in Mobile, Alabama.
All right.
And I have a rule. This goes with being able to handle snow. A rule that I have is it is so rare for me to stop, to have a stopover on plane travel, like extremely rare.
Mm-hmm.
I'm from New York City. I live in Queens. I live right by LaGuardia and JFK. I got a JetBlue hub. I got a Delta hub. Delta's my preferred airline. Like I'm not stopping over to come and see you.
Yeah.
So if you want to go to Mobile, Alabama, you got to hit Pensacola. So that's what we do. So thank you for that.
Yeah, man.
Your business.
Mm-hmm.
With that incredible introduction, maybe we should actually get to the episode. Your business is one that I find fascinating in the regard that it's evolving. Mm-hmm. And most importantly, and I want to talk about some of the accolades of your business. I don't usually do this, but I'll probably sprinkle them in because most of the time over the course of 20, 30 years in the financial advisory space, and again, I encourage everyone, I say this every episode, to read the bio before, but because the markets ebb and flow, the customer experience ebbs and flows, and therefore one would, having nothing to do with you, which is the sad part, your ultimate rating presumably ebbs and flows because as much as you try to tell people, you know, we're going to withstand the storm or we're planning for a downturn or everything like that, I imagine that there are people that call and say my portfolio is down X or this is off plan or nobody planned for a coronavirus or a 9/11 or 2018 or anything like that. That means you're focused on it to be rated so highly for so long. So I want to know where that comes from and kind of how you got into that. We always start at the beginning and how you develop that focus. And then I want to talk about kind of, you know, what that means in the long term.
Yeah. So I got my start in the industry. I always knew from an early age, I'm not going to make a good employee. I need to work for myself. I want to own my own business. I want to make my own way, all that. Right. So I just don't have the type of personality to be a good employee. So I always knew I wanted to own my own business. And so since I was young, I always did, you know, entrepreneurial things and did, you know, stuff to make extra money. And I thought I wanted to own a gym. So that's what I went to college for. Went for business and, you know, because I thought, well, I can be in the gym all day and I can own the gym and that'll be my business that I do. And get to college and start learning a little bit about business and start realizing like, I don't think I want to own a gym, right? Just wasn't like the business model for me or anything like that. And so there for a little bit, I was kind of lost. And ended up taking a personal finance course as an elective, which is a different conversation about why it's not a required course and why it was an elective, right? So I remember taking it as an elective. And after just a few weeks being like, oh, all these things that I'm learning are going to have a direct impact on the rest of my life. Like this is super interesting. This is super applicable to everything that I do. It's going to have a direct impact on everything that I do for the rest of my life. And, so I really got incredibly interested in it and started kind of having the thoughts of like, well, why is this, since this applies to everybody, why is this the first time I'm hearing about all of this? Why is this an elective and not a required course? I started, talking to some of the other students and realizing that they all felt the same way. started talking to my parents about some of the stuff we were learning, and realized that they didn't know most of the things that we were learning, and talked to other adults and they didn't know a lot of the things. And I was like, oh, this is a problem, right? Like, people just don't know how this stuff works, even though it has a direct impact on everything. Money affects just about everything, right? Touches just about everything. And so that was what sparked, like, all right, well, at that stage, I didn't really know what it looked like to get into the industry. But I was like, hey, if I could figure out a way how to teach people these things and make it a business, like, that's something that I would like to do. And started kind of poking around at what it would look like, to the different avenues you can get in this industry, and ended up, wanting to focus on what we focus on now, which is more of the financial planning, not necessarily. So a lot of people, I think, when they think about this industry, just think about investing, which is certainly a part of it. And I think a lot of the reason a lot of people think that is because the majority of the industry, 90 something percent of the people in the industry, the financial advisors or what have you, that's pretty much all that they do, is just, give me some money to invest for you and I'll invest it for you. And there's not a lot of other teaching and education and planning, and it's not well rounded in my view. So the way that we run our practice is to be kind of the all encompassing financial planning, everything from investments to taxes to insurances to, a big part of what we do is business planning. But point is that it's more about diving deep into things and understanding why we're making the decisions that we're making. And so, to your point about the ebbs and flows of the markets and people's reactions to it, I will never forget. I do a lot of reading and researching, and I will never forget a study that I read. And I can't remember the name of the study. This was years ago, but I'll never forget. They followed these groups of people, and it was thousands of people. Half the people had a portfolio of 100% stocks, and half the people had a portfolio of 50% stocks, 50% bonds. And then this was over like a multi-decade, 20, 30-year period of time. The people with a 100% stock portfolio had a much higher return than the people with a 50-50 portfolio, because it's more conservative. But the people with a 100% portfolio, even though they had a much higher overall return, reported a much lower satisfaction rate with their financial advisor because of the ups and downs, right? Because of the volatility. The people with the 50-50 portfolio, even though they realized a much lower overall return, reported a much higher satisfaction rate with their financial advisor because it was a smoother ride. So it's just, the psychology is so interesting to me.
I want to get back to the psychology, because I think you touched on something that is super important in all advisory spaces, but particularly now. So my first question is, do you think that with the internet, social media, access to information, which obviously I think in your business especially, but you've seen that evolution, is it better now than when you graduated college? Meaning, there is still no personal finance requirement in every major university, which is, I agree with you, it's absolutely insane. I actually think that, like, with don't shake the baby after a baby's born, like the video they make you watch in the hospital, like there should be a requirement that every parent comes back to 10 years later and starts teaching their kids about, putting pennies away or the basics. I mean, we have a joke in my family, whenever my kids have a candy or a treat, so they pay me taxes.
Dad tax.
Right, the dad tax. And we have a discussion about what happens if you don't pay taxes. You get big trouble if you don't pay taxes. And there's penalties involved. So you can pay late, but there's penalties involved. And it's a joke, and obviously it's funny, and but imagine that the average American at least heard the word tax and understood the concept of 100% of what you have, varying where you live, but 100% of what you bring in is not yours. And not to get religious, but there's tithing and things like that, and like charity. And as the country moves to the less religion, or the less focus on that, and less focused on family, which is really terrible. It's like, where does this come from? But that was my soapbox with your soapbox about basic financial literacy. But is it harder now that a lot of people have misinformation versus ignorance? And I think that's, and I see that in my field. And personally, I would rather them actually have misinformation than being totally ignorant, because I find that it's easier to bunk a myth, like tell them, like, this is absolutely insane. Like, you can't get there's 15 minutes in my business. 15 minutes doesn't actually save you 15% in the long run. But at least they've heard of the term insurance. If they've heard of what we're talking about.
Right.
Right. I don't know. There's so many more scams out there. So maybe it's worse to have more information. But How do you feel about the ignorance versus, TikTok finance?
It is very strange because I will have people show me, some sort of TikTok or YouTube thing and be like, oh, what do you think about this? And it is strange. And so I think it goes back to there's all sorts of, again, I kind of nerd out on this stuff and do a lot of reading to make myself better, but also just because I'm interested in it, about all of the psychological, all of the biases, right, that we can have that interfere, particularly as it pertains to financial planning or investing or any of that, the decisions we make, right? So we do live in the information age. Have you ever heard of the Dunning-Kruger effect?
No.
All right. So the Dunning-Kruger effect is essentially the less we know about something, the more we think we know about something,
Exactly
right?
right.
So, right. So like you learn about something and you're like, oh my God, I'm an expert in this. And then you do some more reading and you're like, oh my God, I know nothing about this, right? Like the more you actually learn about it, the more you realize like, wow, I am just scratching the surface. There's so much more to know. So the problem with the information age and the ability to find all of this information out here is being able to, like, if you Google something or any of that, it's going to show you what you're searching for. And there's been a lot of problems, and I do think AI is getting a lot better, but AI is missing a lot of context, right? If you use ChatGPT or something like that to try to create your own financial plan or get questions to finance, it can help with some basic financial questions and stuff like that. But it also, the information that you find, you don't know if it's correct. You don't know if, even if it is correct, if it's correct for you. And then even if it is correct for you, you don't know if it's the most correct for you, right? It's kind of like taking those tests and it's like, all of these questions are correct. Which one is most correct?
Right. But I would say, and I'm not, again, you're the professional, but I would say the third is the last is the least problematic. Meaning if every single person in America knew that an idea was a good idea, a plan, had a plan. Let's look, knew what a plan was and had a plan. And even if please jump in and correct me if I'm wrong, but even if 85% of those were the second best option, I feel like we'd be in a better place. Every person would be in a better place. You know what I'm saying? So I hear you. The best option at this point, it's like, and the irony of the social media thing, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but like the irony of the social media thing is the people who have the most followers usually don't have the best advice. And it's like, even the facts. I'm totally fine if I'm going to consume, or someone is going to consume insurance. They want to learn about insurance. Ask ChatGPT the facts. It will not, most of the time, I don't want to say all that. Most of the time, it will not tell you something that's illegal. It will not tell you something that's factually incorrect. You ask it, what's liability insurance? It will give you the answer. But then if you want to go on social media, like, why don't you, not that I should have millions of followers, but at least listen to someone like me about insurance and not some influencer that's not in the insurance field, or listen to someone like you about basic financial advice or an idea. Again, even if your idea, because you don't know me, is not the best idea, but a basic idea of how much you should be saving or what you should be looking at, or things like that. Like anything, but yet we're going to listen to a chef about finance. That's like listening to a chef about medicine instead of a doctor. And not that chefs are bad, but it's just like, somehow people in certain advisory fields feel like anybody can be a genius. So.
Yeah, I think a couple things, man. I think the algorithms are such that, just by saying something inflammatory, or I've noticed this, people will say something like they'll mispronounce something, or they'll say something like clearly wrong, just to, get people love to tell people that they're wrong. People love to give their opinion or whatever. Right. And so they'll get in the comments and it boosts the boosts the algorithm. But also I think people are very sensitive to, all right, if this person is telling me that this is the best whatever, or this is a good, XYZ, is this person telling me this because it's the best or because they have something to sell me? Right. So I think people are, and rightfully so, because there's a lot of people out there that are saying whatever about whatever, and they're just trying to sell something. Right. And I think it's very hard, they call it personal finance for a reason. I think it's very hard. I dislike a lot of the like personal finance talking heads that are out there trying to give very broad, financial advice to a lot of people. And it's like, well, that, again, to your point, being mostly correct for most people is great. But you have some people that take some of these folks' advice as the gospel and they follow it to the T. And I'm like, well, that's right, but it's not right for you or not the most right for you. And so, I mean, one of the things that we like to focus on is fixing the little inefficiencies, because especially for young people, when you run these cash flow reports out, when you run the numbers over a long multi-decade period of
I
time.
don't want to know. I don't want to know. Just
Yeah,
I want to
well,
be ignorant. I just want to be ignorant.
yeah, it's just, but I mean, for young people, everybody thinks like, so I feel like most people are like, oh, I'm making good financial decisions. I'm paying debt. I'm saving. I'm investing. All objectively good things. But I think the thing that people are struggling with is like, well, I don't know if what I'm doing is the most efficient way to do what I'm trying to do, and I don't know if what I'm doing is helping me reach the whatever goals I have for myself. Retirement, let's say, being certainly one of them for most people, or financial freedom, or whatever that means to you. So particularly for younger people, it's fixing probably, a handful of like just little inefficiencies. And when you run the numbers on that, it's like, all right, we're just going to tweak this, change this, tweak this, fix that. And when you rerun these numbers over a multi-decade period of time, I mean, it's usually, even for like the average younger person, let's say in their 30s, it makes a multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars difference, or sometimes millions of dollars of difference. We didn't change how much they were saving. We didn't, I mean, just little inefficiencies, just little things here and there that like
Okay, so
he's seeping out,
you
right?
set me up. You said we weren't going to do this because we hate generalizations, but we're doing it. So you set it up. This was not my next question. I have another question, but it was going to be
Okay.
it would probably be the opposite question. Again, I want to be clear. We're not giving any direct financial advice.
Absolutely.
We're not giving any financial advice to individuals, but most of our audience are young people who are hustling, who are trying to figure out and learn from our guests. So everyone should reach out to, everyone should have a financial advisor. By the way, huge misconception. I think that most people think that financial advisor for the super rich and they're very expensive.
100%.
And I would venture to say, just like anything else in the world, that there's a financial advisor for everyone and at every price point.
Right.
And not just because you're one, but that's, by the way, biggest misconception. Like,
Yep.
I'm not fit for this. It's like people who think that accountants are a huge waste of money and try to do their taxes online and don't realize that what you're paying the accountants by saves you in taxes, but whatever. We digress. What is the number one inefficiency that you see of 20 and 30-year-olds in 2025?
Inefficient use of income. So for younger people, our income is far and away our biggest asset, right? Because we're at the point where we haven't built, right? Maybe some of the assets that like our parents and stuff have, right? So, I mean, for people our parents' age, people retired or near retirement or something like that, it's all about managing the assets because they built the assets. They don't have income because they've retired. When you're younger, it's all about managing the income correctly, right? Our income is our biggest asset. So it's cash flow management. We have this money coming in. We have to pay our bills. We have to do the stuff to live. And I'm never going to be the type of planner to tell people don't take vacations, don't spend money going out to eat. There's a limit to things, certainly, right? Just like using credit cards, and there's certainly being responsible and not being responsible. But we work hard and make money to live the life that we want. But, and the good Lord didn't promise us tomorrow. So live today, but also plan, be prudent and plan for the future. But I think, this money comes in and then they're like, I'm not, the extra, they're like, I'm not really sure what to do with this to help me reach these goals that I have for myself, whatever they are. Should I be paying debt with this money, or would this money be better spent, saved or invested or something like that? Right. And then of course, taxes, as you mentioned earlier, right? How do we minimize taxes, but also not in a way that's too like myopic, short-sighted, right? So it's like, we might be doing this thing that saves us tax dollars this year, but are we creating this huge tax liability for ourselves at some point down the road? Or one of the things that I hate that sometimes
Give it to us. Come on. Get the New York out of you. Come north. Get aggressive.
One of the things that I hate that some CPAs, advice will give. So one of the biggest complaints we hear from our business owner clients is that their CPA is not proactive enough, and they just, they get a lot of, it's very reactive and, hey, send me your stuff towards the end of the year. I'll tell you how much you owe. And one of the things that I hate is like CPA, then they keep in mind this is November, December, something, right? So I've looked at the taxes. Hey, you made too much money last year. You need to go buy something. And they go spend, let's say $100,000. What do they usually buy? They buy a car, right? Car, truck, something like that, to save $30,000 in taxes. So, I mean, if I'm talking to the guys out there, if you're married or have a special lady in your life, you might get irritated when she goes to Target or wherever she goes, comes back and excitedly tells you about whatever she got on clearance and how much money she saved by buying this thing on clearance. Our first thought, generally speaking, is, well, did we need this thing? And how much money did you spend? Right? The same thing you get irritated at your wife or special lady for doing, you're doing on a.
I do not. My wife always spends on everything that I could only, and my 4 daughters on only things that my one son and I agree are totally necessary. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
My wife listens to the podcast. I will not let you incriminate me.
Oh, there you go. Okay. All
I
right.
will not incriminate
All right.
you.
Understood. All right. Good man. You're
No, but
smart man.
I agree. I agree with you. No, the other thing is like, what about the fact that in that conversation, by the way, let's say the CPA is right. What about the fact that that $100,000 over the 11 months prior to this, like, oh, it's great you got a truck. Wouldn't it have been sick if you could have spent $10,000 more in marketing a month for the last 10 months?
Oh yeah, I mean that's the argument I'm making. Is I'm like, all right, well you're going to spend.
But what I'm saying to you is, people think, like, what do you mean? My accountant's amazing. He got me a new truck.
Right.
He got me a new. What are you talking about? My accountant got me a new truck.
I saved $30,000.
I saved $30,000 and I got a truck.
Yeah, you still spent $70,000 on a depreciating asset that doesn't improve the cash flow or value of your business. Right? Doesn't increase the value. Doesn't increase cash flow of the business. None of those things, presumably. Right? Because you went and bought a new truck.
Do you think that the average person should be a business owner? Do you think that entrepreneurship is a grind that is a risk that's worth taking?
I think that entrepreneurialism, business ownership is a skill that can be learned by just about anybody. But I think there's a lot of people out there that are really good at doing the thing, whatever the thing is that they do. And they think, oh, I'm going to start a business doing this. I'm really good at it. Why don't I just do it for myself? And it's like, all right, well, just because you're really good at doing the thing doesn't mean you're going to be a good business owner, right? So, I mean, I don't know why I always use the analogy of a baker. I'm like, all right, if you were the best baker in the world, but you don't know anything about owning a business, you shouldn't open a bakery. You'd be better off being a really great business owner, not knowing how to bake a cake or not knowing anything about bakery, and opening a bakery, right? Because you can always hire somebody to do the baking, but if you understand business, right, as opposed to being really good at doing the thing, not knowing, knowing anything about business, and you're either not going to make much money ever, or you're just going to kind of slowly, you're just really going to beat yourself up and probably owe people money. Like, there was a story of a contractor here in town. He's in jail now for stealing. I don't know if he did or not, millions of dollars from people, getting paid up front for jobs that he never got to or didn't complete or whatever. And totally possible. He totally possibly just straight up stole the money and went into it knowing that. I will say, working with a lot of contractors, it is probably more likely that what happened is he got paid on jobs that he wouldn't get to for 4 to 6 months because he didn't know his numbers and understand his cash flow, had to use that money to help him complete jobs that he's doing now. So then when he got to that job in 4 to 6 months, he didn't have the money for that, and then had to get paid on a future job to help him complete that job. And it was just a circuitous kind of a Ponzi scheme, right? Unknowingly, right? I don't think they meant to do that, but that happens, right? So I hate that that's the case. And like I said, he's in jail now and he'll probably be there for a long time. I don't know. But I think there's a lot of business owners that, again, just because they don't know how to manage the cash flow, back to, again, what's the biggest mistake that we make? We got money coming in. We don't know how to properly allocate it. Proper allocation of cash flow is, I think, one of the biggest mistakes that I see people make. Because, again, it's just inefficiencies. They end up putting into the bank when they should be paying debt with it, or they end up paying debt when they should be investing with it, or whatever, right? There's just there's arbitrage. There's just more efficient ways to do the things that you're trying to do. And those little inefficiencies compounded over a multi-year, multi-decade period of time can either lead to a lot of money lost, or a lot of money gained.
Do you think that that's also the case for the older generation? Meaning, when you look at what the people who did things right and the people who did things, the people who maximize their income and their savings and their financial freedom, and the people who didn't, it basically boils down to a bunch of small decisions or proper planning that they did 30 years before? Taking a look out of it, being employee number 2 at Amazon, or buying a house, and then a developer comes and says they want exactly this location because that's the closest thing for a satellite to their whatever, and here's $1 billion. Besides that.
Yeah. So those things certainly happen, right? There is luck involved in a certain number of cases. But I would say, generally speaking, it is kind of the slow, unsexy grind of just making the right decisions over and over and over again, and that compounding, right? So, Warren Buffett basically says that exact same thing.
Right.
He's like, you're just making these good, small decisions over and over and over again, and they compound, and you end up being rich.
And some bad ones, by the way, but those are less painful because you've got 100 correct ones.
That's right. Yeah, and there's a lot of people that are looking for the silver bullet. You know what I mean? Like looking to hit the grand slam or whatever. And it's like, no, it's singles that will win the game. It's a lot of singles that will win the game, right? It's, if, to use a football analogy, it's 4 yards in a pile of dust, right? So I mean, never forget my high school coach saying that. He's like, we're just marching down the field and we're gonna control the ball and we're gonna score. It's not, but it's way less sexy than that 50-yard
Sure.
bomb that you threw and, all that other sort of stuff. So, yeah, it's just the small wins over and over and over. And I think people that are looking for the silver bullet, it's a million tiny BBs. It's not one single silver bullet. Everybody's looking for the thing that's going to make them rich. And it happens sometimes, but don't count on it.
And I think that that's probably the most important thing for our listeners to take away is that obviously you should engage with a professional, but also where you are today and what you do today will determine your future. And more importantly, if you're seeing a little bit of success or even not, if you're staying the course, and obviously you're not bankrupting yourself, investing money you don't have into this plan, but you're staying the course and the seas are calm, maybe get a little up, but you're not flying high.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to see it because we don't see the whole horizon. But like if you have a business, if you're working in a business, or if you're building a career, you're building that experience, each brick that you put on the house, eventually you'll look down and you'll see you got this massive skyscraper of success.
That's it, man. You build it one brick at a time. You know what I mean? You're not
not millennials or Gen Z. We snap our fingers and bam.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
So,
but I mean, to your point earlier about younger people needing a financial planner, financial advisor, statistically, that is the case. Statistically speaking, younger, non-affluent people get the most benefit from working with a good financial planner or advisor. Now, I will say, I think the majority of the industry is set up in a way to not serve those people because, again, the majority of the industry works in a way where the advisor needs you to come with a pile of money that you're willing to give them to manage for you, and then they're just going to focus on what to do with that money. So again, I'm not saying it needs to be us, but I'm just saying I think finding what's called a fee-based planner that's going to charge a fee that isn't tied, that isn't contingent upon you giving them a bunch of money to manage. Because again, if you're younger and just starting out, you don't probably have that. So I think it's going to be relatively hard to find, but I would say generally speaking, if you can find an advisor that works in such a way where they're going to charge for their time to help you with what you need help with, you're going to get better results than working with a more traditional advisor that expects you to come with a couple $100,000 to give them to manage for you. And then they're just going to focus on what to do with that money. So again, there are, I would say, less than 10%, maybe even less than 5% of the people in the industry work in such a way where they're going to charge directly for their time and not for assets under management or whatever. So it's going to be relatively hard to find, but I would say find somebody that you're comfortable with working with that works in that way. Because I always say, if you're not paying your planner or advisor for their time and advice, whatever advice they give you has to be something that makes them money. Free advice is the most expensive advice.
and by the way, that advisor, just to bring the whole conversation full circle, is taking the same bet that they're asking you to take. Meaning, take the small incremental. Let's say it's monthly guaranteed income to the advisor, right? You're going to pay me. We're going to review this. We're going to do X, Y, Z, and you're going to pay me $100 a month. Obviously, it's more than that.
Right.
But that advisor is saying, I'm going to, just the same way that I'm telling you to take little hundreds and 200s and make a financial plan. I am not telling you to give me 10,000 and we'll deal with it. I'm telling you, I'm in it with you, and therefore I'm taking that advice, which unfortunately a lot of people don't see. Wow. Right. I feel like we got to do a keep hustling finance class for hustlers or business owners and individuals. So maybe we'll do that. But also, anyone who's not watching the video up to this point, just do me a favor. Before we close out the episode, make sure you hit the content for this episode, because this is the first guest we've ever had that's wearing braces. Those are not suspenders; those are braces. I know the difference. I'm a well-educated man, and so just click one like on any of the platforms or on YouTube, just for no other reason than that Andrew is the Southern guy with that fake accent that he's been putting on for the last half hour. And he even wore the uniform of the braces. Like, he literally looks like he's about to, I don't even want to ask what shoes you're wearing. You look like you're about to go out to pasture. So whatever. Thank you for fitting every single Southern stereotype.
That's what I'm here for, man.
That's it. Andrew, as you know, we ask each of our guests to leave us with their favorite motivational, inspirational quote and what it means to them and their hustle. Again, I urge all of our listeners to follow Andrew, to heed his advice to review this episode, to find someone to work with, whether Andrew or otherwise. And Andrew, again, I'll say thank you for being here, and the floor is yours.
One thing that my favorite one that I've had since high school is anything worth having is worth working for. Because if it comes easy, it'll leave easy, and it's probably not super valuable. And you appreciate things that you work for, and those are typically the best things.
No better way to end it. This has been another episode of Keep Hustling with my guest, Andrew Martin, all the way from Pensacola, Florida. Thank you so much for being here, Andrew. And remember, to all of our listeners, do well by doing good. And of course, and always, keep hustling. All right, hustlers, that brings us to the end of another fantastic episode. Thank you for listening. The listeners are the most important part of this show. If you like what you heard, please leave us a review wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Your feedback means the world to us and helps us reach more listeners. Plus, be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode. We have some amazing guests and topics lined up for you, and we don't want you to miss out. And finally, if you have any suggestions, comments, or even just want to say hello, please feel free to reach out to us on all social media platforms. We are Keep Hustling Pod on Instagram, X, Facebook, and LinkedIn. We would love to hear from you to continue the conversation. Thanks again for tuning in and supporting our podcast. We truly appreciate each and every one of you. Until next time, stay curious, stay hungry, and keep hustling.